But our next speaker is going to be Lindsay from the Young Liberals. She was the one who drafted the policy for the Liberals. So we'll let her talk a little bit about that, and then we'll move forward.
Okay. Hi,
Thanks,
I'm Lindsay. Can everyone hear me all right? Fantastic. So I'm going to start by actually giving a history of narcotics policies in Canada, and just kind of explaining a little bit more what Brian has said. And then I will talk a little bit about the history of the Liberal Party of Canada in their quest to legalize marijuana. So Brian is correct. A lot of our narcotics policies started out as very racist policies. The first narcotics policy in Canada came in 1907, which was, and in 1908, which is a direct reaction to the riots in Vancouver over Chinese immigrants and their perceived opiate use. Most of the immigrants who came to Vancouver from China were here to work on the railroad. They were young, male, and without their families. And many of them continued to be without their families because of the head tax. And took a lot of them to smoking a lot of opiates, just as a recreational thing. And so in 1908, the Opium Act was passed, and it was, revision was passed in 1911, and then finally in 1923, marijuana, cocaine, and heroin were added into a consolidated act which passed in 1929. Interestingly, the 1923 act coincided with the end of the head tax. So that is where a large portion of our narcotics policies have come from. It was a direct reaction to the riots in Vancouver over the immigration of Chinese workers. And in terms of the Liberal Party, I mean, legalization and change on policy in marijuana has been going on for a long time, and I'm not going to take credit for starting it by any means. It's been happening in our party for 40 years. And most recently, yes, in 2012, we passed at the National Convention a policy to legalize, regulate, and tax marijuana. That was started by two groups, the Young Liberals of Canada and the Liberal Party of Canada in British Columbia, of which I was a part at the time, at our provincial convention in 2011. And so that policy outlines in about a page how we feel about marijuana. And I'm not talking about medical marijuana, I'm talking about marijuana use at large. Our policy generally, I know that a lot of you are here to talk about medical marijuana, but our policy does concentrate on marijuana at large. And our policy does say that we would like to regulate, legalize, and tax. And that was taken forward from the 2012 convention, and there is now a policy white paper that you can read online. It's a little bit more in depth. It's about 35 pages long, sorry. And it really outlines kind of, you know, yes, we say let's legalize, but what does that really mean for our country? What does that look like? How does that affect our international standing? I mean, we're signatories. Canada is a signatory to 3 conventions, United Nations conventions on narcotics policy. So, and that's generally where our schedules come from in the CDSA. If you ever look at narcotics policies in different countries, they look remarkably similar to ours, because everyone pretty much copied the schedules. And so we've moved forward. We have our white paper now, which really outlines, you know, a lot of questions that people have. You know, if it's legal, who gets to have it? What are the rules? What does that mean for our country? Can you export it? And so those are all questions, and we can talk if you have specific questions after. But generally, how our party feels is that marijuana is a substance that can be used by legal adults, not children. It can be obtained in the same way that you obtain alcohol, and it can be consumed in a manner that's safe. And what that means is basically very similar to how alcohol is consumed. Do not drive, and there are some different rules maybe about use around children because it is mostly smoked. I mean, obviously, if you're using a vaporizer, or if you're smoking a lit joint, there are going to be issues with consumption around minors, because they'll also be consuming it at that same time. in a way that they don't consume alcohol when you drink alcohol. But other than that, I mean, our policy follows very much what Brian says, and what John Stuart Mill said a couple hundred years ago. Unless you're harming someone else, the state cannot tell you what to do with your body. So yeah, and I mean, moving forward, we have formed a national working group to continue on to make sure that, you know, this policy isn't just something that, you know, we've said in nice words that we're going to do it, but that it's still moving forward. And obviously, it's working out pretty well because Justin Trudeau is on board now. So yeah.
Awesome.